Hey everybody, it's Carson Gourdie, the sports anchor for Fox Illinois in Champaign, Illinois. They've had two road games in a bye week, but they're finally back. They'll be taking on Purdue. They got a battle for the cannon. Personally, not my favorite rivalry trophy. I'm more of the Illinois guy with Ohio State, or even the Land of Lincoln with Northwestern trying to win Lincoln's hat. But this one has a lot of history, and it matters because Purdue and Illinois have a lot of similarities. They pretty much recruit the same kind of players. They're only 90 miles apart. And they also have a lot of familiar coaches with one another. And we'll get into that later. Ryan Walters is Purdue's head coach. He's the former Illinois defensive coordinator just 2 years ago. He went over to West Lafayette. He took a couple of Illinois assistants, took Illinois players, took Illinois recruits, won the Hudson Card sweepstakes. Last year, Purdue killed Illinois 44-19. But this year, things have really gone south at Purdue. So far this season, they're 1-4. They're losing games by an average of 37 points. So it seems like, what did Michael Scott always say? Well, looks like the turntables. So this has not been a good situation for Purdue. It does seem like Illinois has momentum. And they opened up as a 17-point favorite. It's ballooned all the way up to 23 points. Vegas is saying this is outside the margin of error. They're saying Illinois should kill the Purdue Boilermakers. But if you look at recent history, the Purdue Boilermakers have had a lot of success against Brett Bielema and Illinois just in general. This is a game Illinois has not won since 2019. That's when Lovie Smith was head coach. And Brett Bielema is 0-3. There's been some pretty bad losses. 2022, Illinois came in as a favorite, lost to the Boilermakers, and that cost them a division title. And last year, Brett Bielema wanted to probably come out and make an example of Ryan Walters. Be like, hey, my 36-year-old former assistant isn't going to beat me. And it was a blowout, and that was probably one of the worst losses for Illinois last year. But like I said earlier, this is not the average Purdue team that we've been seeing over the past few years. 2 years ago, Purdue was playing in the Big Ten Championship and played a good first half against Michigan. You fast forward to 2024, they can't stop anybody. This is their last four games, four losses, by the way. Notre Dame, 66-7, gave up 362 rushing yards. Oregon State, they lost 38-21, gave up 341, lost to Nebraska by 18. Illinois beat Nebraska in overtime. And last week was probably the worst. They lost to Wisconsin 52-6, gave up 230 rushing yards. This is one of Wisconsin's worst teams in probably 15 years. And they're making a joke out of Ryan Walters and his program. So this seems like a pretty good opportunity for Illinois to finally get on top of their rival. When we're looking at Purdue, last year they had a pretty decent passing offense. People that follow the program of Illinois know 2 years ago, Purdue and Illinois both wanted to get Hudson Card. He was one of the top rated transfers coming out of the Texas Longhorns. And Ryan Walters put on a better show and won him. He hired offensive coordinator Graham Harrell, and they were able to get Hudson Card to West Lafayette. So Illinois settled for Luke Altmaier. In hindsight, Illinois probably won that battle, but Hudson Card was a big get for Ryan Walters. But you look at the stats so far this year against Power 5 competition, Hudson Card only has 3 touchdowns. He has 4 interceptions, hasn't thrown for more than 150 yards in the past 4 games. And obviously, it's really hurt him that he doesn't have his 2 top wide receivers from last year, Deion Burks and TJ Sheffield. Transferred to Oklahoma and Connecticut, respectively. Purdue just doesn't have the NIL to keep all of its players. So they just don't have the talent that most Big Ten programs are usually probably used to. But bottom line, this is not the same explosive Purdue offense that Illinois took on last year. But when I talked to Brett Bielema at the Thursday press conference, he still had some pretty nice things to say about the Texas transfer.
Well, obviously, we evaluated and watched him out of when he was transferring the portal. The guy we saw last year, very live arm, can run. He can and obviously make a lot of adjustments within a play. I think great quarterback can make something happen when nothing is there, right? And I think he falls in that category. So, he's a very dynamic player. Obviously, they got a new offensive play caller or play system, but the more you see of him, the more you appreciate just the multi-talents he brings.
One of my favorite parts of college football, and this might be a little cynical or weird, but I love hot seats. I love the coaching carousel. When Ryan Walters got hired to become Purdue's head coach, he was Illinois' defensive coordinator. And people that follow the program know that he did a pretty darn good job. When Lovie Smith was head coach and defensive play caller, Illinois was giving up 30 points per game every single year. And then Ryan Walters, within 2 years, like this isn't a joke. Like Illinois literally had the number one scoring defense in the country in 2022. They only gave up 12.8 points per game. And Ryan Walters did a great job of developing those Lovie Smith recruits into NFL players. Devin Witherspoon, Quan Martin, Sidney Brown, Kirby Joseph. I did not expect Kirby Joseph to be a good NFL player. I didn't think Quan Martin would be a second round NFL draft pick. Devin Witherspoon was the number 5th pick overall. The Seattle Seahawks took him. So Ryan Walters was a rising star, and Purdue needed to replace Jeff Brom with somebody that had energy, and they thought he could recruit. Even though he was a defensive guy, they trusted him with the offense because he did hire Graham Harrell, who in college football circles also used to be a rising star. But so far with Purdue, they've really struggled to keep that NIL money and keep those good players. And they just did not develop Hudson Card as maybe most people thought. Graham Harrell, their offense coordinator, was already fired 2 weeks ago. So this is tough territory for Ryan Walters. It's been reported by the Indianapolis Star that if he gets fired in 2024, he would have to be paid $9 million. It doesn't seem like Purdue might be able to afford that expense. They kind of run a tighter budget than Illinois or Ohio State or Michigan. But, earlier on Monday, because everybody knows Ryan Walters at Illinois, he's a very confident guy, had a lot of success here. When Aaron Henry was talking about him, the defense coordinator that replaced him, when they're not playing each other, they're rooting for Ryan Walters. It's sort of a brotherhood. Here's a clip of Aaron talking about it.
Speak about, like, if we ever had a chance to play each other, like, we going to go at each other's neck, right, and hug each other after the game. You know what I'm saying? It's like to your point, it's like a brotherhood. But at the end of the day, it's not about me, him. It's not about coach. It's about our guys going out there and showing what they can.
Just overall, this seems like a pretty good opportunity for Illinois to bounce back. 2 weeks ago, they lost a tough one to Penn State. And that was a game, like, when you watched it at the time, you thought, yeah, Illinois had their chances. Everybody remembers right before the first half, Illinois just needed 2 yards to score a touchdown, go up at halftime. But they had a debacle. They had a fumble, which pushed them back 20 yards, and then they missed, a field goal just before halftime. They ended up losing 21-7. But when you look at the box score, it was kind of clear that Penn State kind of had a dominant victory. They had 250 rushing yards. Illinois only had 30. Penn State probably has too much talent in the trenches. They're probably just a little bigger and faster than Illinois. But that was a game where Illinois played, better than what people thought. I mean, the point spread was 19 points, and Illinois kept it close for pretty much the entire game. And overall, this has been just a really good year for Illinois so far. Not a lot of people expected a 4-1 start, and right now they're ranked number 23 in the country. And if Illinois wants to continue to win in this Big Ten conference, they're going to have to get that running game going. If you take out the Nebraska game, if you take out Eastern Illinois, Caden Fegan and the offense line have really struggled to get it going. It's been Luke Altmaier and the wide receivers carrying this offense. But when you play Michigan, when you play Rutgers, when you're going to play Oregon, you're going to have to establish a running game and make it easier for Luke Altmaier and his wide receivers. And this seems like a pretty good opportunity going against Purdue. Like I read the stats earlier. I mean, Purdue can't stop a 7th grade football team. 362 yards to Notre Dame. Oregon State, they're not even a Pac-12 school anymore. That's a mid-major team. They gave up 341 yards. Wisconsin barely beat South Dakota, and they had 230 yards rushing. Caden Fegan, this is a good game to kind of get that 100 yards. This is a good time to get Khalil Valentine some carries. If you want to get Josh McCray had a great game against Purdue 3 years ago. He had 160 yards. Let's see more of that today. And for Illinois' defense, they've been the pleasant surprise of the year. Last year, they gave up 30 points per game. Right now, they're giving up less than 20. And that secondary has played a lot better. I don't know if Hudson Card really has the tools or the players at his personnel at disposal to really keep that secondary honest. They haven't been able to throw more than 150 yards against actual teams this year. But I think this is just a good case study for Illinois to see how they do handle a mobile quarterback. Hudson Card has some legs. If you look at Texas, he would pump out a couple of rushing touchdowns a year. If you look at the stats last year against Purdue, There was games where Hudson Card would have 70, 80 yards rushing. That's one area where Brett Bielema, one of his defenses was maybe had struggles with during his tenure. I mean, I remember Ryan Walters in his first year. Rutgers, his quarterback, ran the ball pretty well against them. So in this kind of game, this is kind of, Illinois, you're kind of playing golf. You're kind of playing against yourself. You want to cut out those penalties from what you saw against Penn State. You want to protect the quarterback better than what happened against Penn State. Luke Altmaier got sacked 7 times against Penn State. That's unacceptable. That can't happen later in the year. And you finally want to see that running game get established. Brett Bielema was at Wisconsin. That's when he had Ron Dane. Well, he didn't have Ron Dane. That was in the 90s. But he had Monte Ball, James White, Melvin Gordon. Brett Bielema never got outrushed by 220 yards like what happened last week. So that's one thing from his Wisconsin tenure that would be nice to see to come to Illinois, is to win that rushing battle every single week. And that's something that they're going to have to do this time. Illinois obviously opened up as a 17-point favorite. It's up to 23. That's a lot of points. Just for context, if they win 35-13, they don't cover. But this is not the Purdue team that Jeff Brown left over. They're not competing for Big Ten titles. This is a team that has lost their last 4 games by an average of 37 points. It would be refreshing for Illinois to come out and actually cover the spread and take care of business. Because, you look at the schedule going forward, Illinois's got Michigan, Rutgers, Michigan State, Northwestern, Oregon, and Minnesota. This is shaping up to be an 8-win season for Illinois. Coming into the year, Vegas had them at 5.5, struggling to try to make a bowl game. And if they take care of business and actually get to those 8 wins, Illinois is probably looking at another Florida Bowl, or maybe the Music City Bowl in Nashville, maybe the Citrus Bowl in Orlando, or the Rely Quest Bowl in Tampa. And just for context, it might not sound like a big deal making a bowl game, but since 1994, Illinois has made 8. To put that into context, I did some research. Minnesota, since 1994, has made 18. Northwestern has made 14. And Purdue has made 15 bowl games. There's no reason why these schools should be doubling up Illinois with bowl appearances. They have no more NIL and donor support. They don't really have better recruiting situations. I'm sorry, no kid wants to play in Minnesota in the month of November. Northwestern's really hard to get into academically. Purdue's in Indiana. There's not a lot of high school talent in Indiana. So I think this just kind of shows that Illinois has been underachieving for nearly 30 years. And Brett Bielema has literally been the most successful coach. He's made them competent, and they continue to rise as a program. But these are the kind of games where you can't play down to competition. You have to win back the cannon. Because we saw with, let's just say 2022, Illinois started 7-1. They're 17.5-point favorites against a Michigan State team that had 8 players suspended. And they lost that game, 23-15. And that was the start of a downward spiral for the next year and a half for Illinois football. They lost a lot of momentum. And they lost the fans. They didn't have a sellout for nearly 2 years after that game. If Illinois loses to Purdue this week, you do lose a lot of goodwill built with the fans and the national media after beating Nebraska and Kansas. Usually there's not concerns about Illinois playing up to competition. Like 2022, they nearly knocked off Michigan. Brett Bielema doesn't really lose games by more than 10 points. But this is a game where they want to come out and literally, put his former assistant, Ryan Walters, just kind of back in his place. So this should be a good game. This is going to be a 2:30 game on Saturday. Illinois wins this. They move to 5-1 and will just be 1 win away from a bowl game. Purdue's been struggling, but hey, there's a lot of common ties right here. They have 3 former Illinois coaches, former Illinois players, former Illinois transfers. So it should be a fun one for the battle for the Purdue Cannon. Well, that's going to wrap it up. I'm Carson Gourdie. Hope you enjoyed it.
Don't miss a video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel today for more Central Illinois news.